Haddock Mall Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. It's a beautiful Thursday. Thank you for tuning in. Are you a fan of soccer?
Yes, I am.
All right, we went to see your daughter playing soccer not too long ago, right?
Yep, Shannon and TJ were both goalies in high school.
That's right. I forgot you had two children that were doing soccer.
Yep.
Let me tell you something. We have a book, The National Team. We want to talk about this book. It is written by our guest, Caitlin Murray, on Amazon. It is getting really good reviews. In fact, 5 stars across the board. The U.S. women's national soccer team won 3 World Cups and 4 Olympic gold medals. They set record TV ratings. They drew massive crowds. They earned huge revenues for FIFA and U.S. soccer, and they helped to redefine the place of women in sports, and they just draw lots of crowd, lots of people. The National Team is the book that talks to, interviews with, I should say, the players, the coaches, the officials, lots of names you probably know if you're following this sport. And right now, let's talk to Caitlin Murray. She's one of the leading authorities on this particular subject. She's a leading soccer journalist. She's written for all of them, Robin, the New York Times, ESPN, Fox Sports. So it's such an honor to have her on our show to talk about the inside story of the women who changed soccer. Caitlin Murray, it's an honor to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you calling? Well, where are we calling? Where are you?
I'm in Portland, Oregon. It's a little early here.
Oh, yeah? We woke you up early? Well, that's why we played that drum music in the beginning. My brother lives out there. My brother's not too far from Portland.
Mm-hmm.
He's the veterinarian.
Yeah, it's a great soccer town.
Oh, is it? So maybe that's why my brother moved out there. He's a vet. Do you have a dog? You might go to see him.
I don't, but if I get one, I will definitely reach out and get his card.
There you go.
So can I ask you something? As a journalist who specializes in sports, was soccer a new thing for you, or were you attracted to soccer from day one?
No, soccer was always my favorite sport because, unlike a lot of other American sports, there are no stoppages. So it's just kind of always flowing. Something can always happen at any moment. And I don't know, that really appealed to me in soccer.
So have we grown up? I mean, we've been a little immature when it comes to women's sports, but lately I noticed that it's becoming a more level playing field, not to use a pun sort of there. But I mean, what do you think? Do you think we've grown out of that, whatever we were going through for a while? I mean, women's basketball was awesome, but we weren't giving it the same respect as men's basketball.
Yeah, I think that the landscape is changing. I think, with soccer is a young sport in the United States, so there wasn't this long-held idea that it was a men's sport. So I think people have really embraced women's soccer in a way that maybe other women's sports haven't been embraced, and they've had to kind of get over the idea of it being a man's sport. And I think we have seen the WNBA is growing, and I mean, I think people forget that the men's leagues that we all watch have been around for decades, and the women's leagues are actually pretty new. So, they need time to develop and grow themselves.
And how about the National Women's Soccer League?
Yeah, I mean, it's in its 7th year. It's growing, I think. The Orlando Pride is a team that is doing really well. Here in Portland, we have the Portland Thorns. They've been doing really well. And in some markets, you have teams that aren't doing so well. But, the league is only 7 years old. And you look at MLS, whereas Orlando City plays, that league has been around for over 20 years. So, there's a difference. I think that with the World Cup this summer in France, you have to hope that's going to help the NWSL. It's going to get more eyeballs on women's soccer and get people excited about maybe going to an Orlando Pride game or, whatever it is.
Do the coaches scout the high schools?
There's a complicated scouting network in soccer. I know that the youth national teams are kind of always evaluating players, so I think it happens even before high school with a lot of, travel teams and, youth academies and that sort of thing. The soccer scouting network is something that is kind of continuing to develop and grow in this country all the time because, in Europe and South America, they are so good at it, and the U.S. just needs to get better at it.
So do we have any, in the book, do you have any Rocky stories, the player who did look like a dark horse and wasn't going to do as well as she proved herself to be, or maybe a team that fits that description?
Well, I think one of the interesting stories is I think your listeners, probably a lot of them watched the 2015 World Cup, which the U.S. won, and the star of that tournament was Carli Lloyd. People probably remember she scored a hat trick in the final. She scored from halfway down the field in the final. She was sensational. But Carli Lloyd is someone who has been doubted a lot throughout her career. She got cut from the team. She was benched. She wasn't playing. And time again, she kind of came back from people doubting her. In 2012 at the Olympics, she wasn't playing at all. Someone had to get injured. And then she went in and took that tournament by storm. She scored the game-winning goal in the gold medal match. So Carli Lloyd is definitely one of those players who keeps kind of overcoming the odds.
Oh, is that right? I'm guessing that there are the two types of fans would be the newcomer, obviously, and the person who's been following it for a long time. So does the book help the newcomer become more familiar with some of the stars of the past and the ones to look forward to seeing more of?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that this book would be coming out right before the 2019 World Cup, which starts now in, a week or two. So I wanted it to be something that people tuning into the World Cup, they would be able to read this book and kind of get up to speed. Because I do think in 2015 when the U.S. won, they did get a lot of new fans that haven't followed the team. They don't know the team's history. And there is a lot more to this team than meets the eye. They've gone through a lot of battles for equal pay, better treatment. They've been through a lot, and they weren't always this dominant team that we see now. So this book was definitely written in mind with the casual reader. For someone who has followed the team and likes the team and knows the team, this book will also be interesting for them. I wanted, I've been following the team very closely, and I wrote the book I wanted to read. So there's a lot of, anecdotes and things in there that have never been shared before that will be interesting as well.
Oh, you focus on the player Mia Hamm. She has a very personal and very emotional story that you have in the book.
Yeah, her story, her brother Garrett passed away when she was, kind of on the way to the height of her stardom. And, I can't really do the story justice here. But in the book, I talk about how that kind of, influenced her as a player and was something that, kind of motivated her to be the player that she was. That was a very difficult thing for her to have all the success that she had, but not have her brother there.
And you said that she set up a foundation.
Yeah. She set up a charity game called the Garrett Game that raised money for research for the disorder that her brother was diagnosed with. And it was interesting because, I talked about how in this book, equal pay and better treatment is a theme that comes up a lot. And actually, the Garrett Game and this charity event kind of turned into an idea for the team to also start, doing these all-star games to make money for the team because U.S. Soccer wasn't really paying them, and they needed to find another way to make money as soccer players so they could continue to play the sport that they loved. So, it kind of had an interesting way of helping the team as a whole as well.
You also have in there some of the comparisons between the American players and the Japanese players.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. style is a style that took a long time to develop. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book is that, the U.S. won the World Cup in 1991, but when I spoke to the players, they said, we weren't the best team in that tournament. We weren't the most technical. We didn't have the best skills. What we had was a winning mentality, a fighting mentality that we were going to scrape and claw our way through these games, and we weren't going to let anyone beat us. And I think, we can talk about style of play and different ways of playing the game, but that was really the differentiator and kind of the defining component of the U.S. team. It's just their mentality was so strong and so relentless that has allowed them to be so successful over the years.
Wow, we all love stories like this, but I wanted to tell you one part of what I got from this is that whenever in any field we have people doing really well, and that is stimulating the imagination and the hopes of a young person who wants to follow in those footsteps. And it seems like you're getting reviews that indicate that the young girls are picking up the book and they just are devouring it because their dream becomes more focused. They can focus more on their dream because they see other people already doing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was something that the players in the 90s, when they were on the team, that was something that they talked about. They didn't have any role models growing up. Right. Julie Foudy joked that her role models were 7 foot tall because they were NBA players.
Right.
So the women's national team is kind of a new sort of role model that people hadn't seen before. These are players who, they're not super rich, they're not super famous, they're really relatable, and they're winners, and they're fighters, and they are different types of role models that, when I go to a U.S. women's national team game and you hear the screams from the crowd, it's like NSYNC is there, or, back in the day, the Beatles or something, because it's just young girls are screaming. They're so excited to see these players. And, like you said, I've gotten a lot of really great reviews, but the ones that really stand out, I had a father email me and say, his daughter carries the book with her everywhere, and she'll stop and read her favorite parts out to her family. And I don't know, that is the sort of thing that's really touching for me to hear.
I know.
Because, I mean, there aren't a lot of role models for young girls, and this team is definitely it.
Yeah, I love when we can inspire young people who want to become something and have dreams of becoming something great. I wanted to mention also, part of the book, I didn't know that there was a ticker tape parade in New York City for the team.
Yeah. The images of that ticker tape parade are incredible. I mean, we do have a full color photo gallery in the book,
right,
but I don't know if they do it justice. The amount of people who were there, it was bonkers.
And when was that? When did the ticker tape parade happen?
It was so when the team won the World Cup in 2015. It was a few days later. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
New York City really turned out for that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm looking at the picture now. Yeah. We don't even have ticker tape in today's world anymore.
No.
They must have just made some confetti just for the parade, right?
Well, there was video of office workers opening their windows and dumping their paper shreddings out. So,
neat.
I guess now that's how they do it.
As a journalist, do you have interaction with the spectators too? Are you able to interview some of them or comment on how the spectators react to some of the plays? Because sometimes they can get really nasty.
Yeah, I mean, as a journalist on social media, I am always in touch with fans. Fans are always reaching out to me, asking questions or offering feedback on, the stuff that I'm writing or, the interviews that I'm getting. Yeah, I mean, in terms of some of them being nasty, I mean, that's social media in a nutshell. And, I talked to the players about that before, and it just kind of goes with the territory. It's something you sort of put up with, and some of the players will block fans who roots them. I support that. So, that's more of a social media issue than just, with these players.
What do you think about the reaction, that was it Brandi Chastain that took off her top but she was wearing her sports bra?
Yeah.
I thought that reaction was bad.
Yeah, I talk about that quite a bit in my book. There were columns written the next day saying that she kind of tarnished the U.S. and people were saying that it was inappropriate. And one of the most interesting things about working on this book is, in 1999, I was a small child. I was not following the coverage of the team or reading newspapers. So to go back and look at the way people talked about the U.S. women's national team in 1999 was fascinating because it was so overtly sexist in a way that I just don't think would be allowed or acceptable today. And that was really jarring to see how people talked about the team, talked about their looks, and called them babes, and in actual real newspapers were doing this. So it was really shocking, and I think that wouldn't happen today, hopefully, fingers crossed. But that was definitely fascinating to see how people reacted to that Brandi Chastain moment that, the further we get away from that moment, I think the more we celebrate it.
Yeah, because I know my daughter was in high school at the time with her soccer team, and they thought that was great because of all the freedom and everything, and their, the attire, there wasn't anything lewd about it at all.
Right, yeah. Men take off their shirts all the time. In fact, men removed their shirts when they scored goals so much that FIFA eventually made it a yellow card if you did that because the men did it so much. So it wasn't really any different.
Talk about the difference in cultures when the team is traveling to other countries, especially countries that already embrace soccer in a huge way.
Yeah, I think that it has changed over the years, and definitely in the early days, the players talked about a little bit of a culture shock going to some of these countries that weren't used to having women soccer players. At the first World Cup in 1991, Brandi Chastain told me about how people would see the team and kind of just take pictures of them. They didn't really seem to know who they were, but they thought it was kind of weird that there was, this group of women who were athletes in China. So, over the years it's definitely changed. Now the Women's World Cup is such a big event, and I think every country sort of knows that and embraces that it's really changed. But in the early days, I think there's definitely some culture shock.
Let's see. I have a question about Megan Rapinoe. Why is she why did she let politics, get between her and the sport? You have to respect the president, whoever the president is.
Well, Megan Rapinoe is a player who has never been shy to talk about what she believes in, and she believes in inclusion and progressive ideas. That's, I don't know that's kind of been Donald Trump's platform. So, if people are going to ask her questions, Megan Rapinoe is one of those players who's never going to shy away from speaking her mind. And it's been interesting to see how her willingness to talk about some of these things has made her a divisive player on the team because I've interviewed her many times. She's really affable and friendly, and she's full of personality and just really likable. And I think that was sort of, her character trait when, she was first on the team. And now that she has decided to talk about politics and, talk about her support of, Colin Kaepernick's protests and that sort of thing. That sort of changed her place in the team, or the way people talk about her. So it's been really interesting to see how that has happened. But
Well,
Megan Rapinoe is someone, she off the field is like she is on the field. She does whatever comes naturally to her. She goes for it. She doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
So that's what makes her a great player. So I guess you don't really want her to not be that person,
Yeah, exactly. You know what I always think, whenever I see a public figure that is on a talk show, for example, and they're talking about the thing they're known for, in this case it would be soccer, that's interesting. But it's also, to me, interesting to find out that, they like to fly kites, or they like to ski, or they vacation in the Bahamas or something. I always find the other part, or their political viewpoints, I always find that stuff interesting. If a political viewpoint is maybe opposite of what I think, it doesn't change my feeling about them. I respect them and their intelligence. And I think I'm not that unusual. I think America is that way. I think we're kind of all feel that way. The press makes it seem like we're not, but I think we're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, she's asked about it and she talks about it, and if people don't like what she has to say, I mean, they don't really have to listen to it. They don't have to root for her when she's scoring goals if they have a problem with what she says.
I bet they do, though.
I mean, the great thing about the national team is that these are women from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different beliefs, and we root for them as the American team. They're representing the U.S., and the U.S. is a very diverse country with people of different viewpoints and people of different backgrounds. And I think that's kind of the great thing about the national team, is that it does have all these different collections of players, but at the end of the day, they're there representing the U.S. and they're representing us as a whole. And, that's what it's all about.
Can you comment a little bit about the lawsuit that was filed over the artificial turf? I really don't know anything about that, but it looks like there were a lot of well-known people who were behind this or supporting of the opinion that the women had on the team.
Yeah, so in 2015, the World Cup was planned for artificial turf. A men's World Cup has never been played on artificial turf, and the women, unsurprisingly, didn't like that because artificial turf, soccer players say it's kind of harsher on their bodies. Mm-hmm. It's harder to recover from. You get injured more often. So the U.S. sort of led the way, but players around the world that were competing in the World Cup signed on. A lot of celebrities weighed in, like Tom Hanks and U.S. senators supported them as well. And they tried to get the tournament changed to natural grass, but FIFA just wasn't going to budge. And, FIFA doesn't have the greatest track record in terms of equality or supporting women. So they gave up, and I think it did kind of affect the tournament. I was there in 2015, and some of the ball bounces were sort of weird. Some of the turf did not feel great. I could see that it had a lot of impact for the players who were running on it. But, at least now, 2019, the World Cup starts June 7th. It'll be on natural grass. So we have that to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, it is good. The book is called The National Team. It's written by Caitlin Murray. It's getting really good reviews on Amazon. I would like to give away the copy that was sent to us. If you call me at 622-9622, I'll set it aside for you. The rest of us have to go buy it. I found it on Amazon, and I was wondering if there was a different website you'd like to direct us to.
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. It's also in most Barnes & Noble locations, so you can pick it up in person. But a website that will have all the retailer links is uswnTbook.com. That stands for U.S. Women's National Team. So uswnTbook.com will have all of the links for people who want to buy it.
Thank you, Caitlin, for what you're doing. You're helping me understand something I really didn't know much about, and I think you're helping those who really follow this embrace it, especially the young girls who are looking up to these women to try to follow in their footsteps. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump calls special counsel Robert Mueller highly conflicted.